with anything when I leave this conversation. But anyway, if you guys do have any follow-up or anything afterwards, feel free to send me an email, send Colin an email, and we can certainly answer any questions that you might have. But keep it, informal. Certainly feel free to answer, or sorry, pop any questions by the guys as you go, noting it is only an hour, so we're hoping to get through a fair amount in that time. So yeah, with that, I'll turn it over to Ramin, and enjoy the webinar. I'm sure you guys will find it informative.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Talk to you all soon. Bye.
Bye. So actually, just a heads up, I haven't timed this. So, the pacing might start out really slow, and then I'll be like going into like really fast mode towards the end if I see that I'm running out of time. But, those of you who know me know I like to start with PowerPoint just because. So I'm going to start with a little bit of just a few slides to talk about, what JET is, and one slide on like why, it might work in tandem with Power BI and not like instead of, or, it basically could be part of your reporting strategy effectively. So there's, I don't know, I can never find enough bullet points to put on overview stuff, but I'm going to start with like, what is JET? Then I'm going to have like a single slide really on Power BI and JET. And then I'll actually just hop right into the demo, which is really, I think, the effectiveness, like demonstrating the effectiveness of the tool is just clicking through and showing you how to use the thing, right? So what is JET? So I mean, as like the name implies, it's a reporting tool, but it's a reporting tool that runs in Excel, and we'll get into that bit. But it reaches across the internet and connects to Business Central. And you use your Office account to authenticate, which is important because like the Office authentication is what kind of determines what user you're logged in as in Business Central, which then also kind of limits which companies you can access and which permissions you can access, which data you can access based on your permissions that are set up in Business Central. And that's kind of equivalent to also Power BI, which uses OAuth as well, which is great. So that way you're sure that when someone's running the report, they can't reach in and grab data that they're not entitled to see, basically, right? It is an extension or an add-in for Excel. So there's a little JET tab you click, and it's got its own kind of little ribbon actions and stuff. So it's embedded within Excel, which is great because most of the time the data that people like to work with, they like to pull it into Excel and do their own kind of number crunching and kind of off the side analysis anyway. It does have its own kind of functions, and you can either type them into the formula bar, like I really like to do, but that's kind of like once you're really accustomed to using it, or you could use the clicky feely interface that we showed in the the previous slide, the little ribbon actions. Also, you can use the results of it, and even like embedded within the formula, some Excel functions as well, and formatting. So here I have little colors and this little sparkline thing for like, a flag. But yeah, so like you could see subtotaling, addition, like all the normal kind of end of month, like all that kind of stuff, the functions within Excel itself, you can use in tandem, in conjunction, and even embedded and nested within kind of JET functions in the formula bar. The other thing is also it's got wizards and stuff that you can use. So, it's kind of daunting sometimes to how to start building reports, but there's a bunch of different like out of the box wizards that you can use just to kind of step through and use kind of an interface to build kind of your reports. This last one here is actually a table builder, which I find really, really fascinating. I think it's a pretty big deal, but I'll show you guys that one as well. And finally, because it is an Excel file, like it's all saved within Excel, when you save it, you can basically, like here I have a Teams site that, Teams has this little Excel add-in that you can do. So, I click on that and I can actually embed, quote unquote, the web version of the Excel file within the team. So you can run reports in JET and then publish the results to Teams, and people can just click and play with it like they would any other Excel file that you publish. You can also, attach it to emails and all that kind of stuff, which is falling very, very out of vogue these days, attaching emails. It's a lot of times people just like to upload it somewhere and have people point to it because because reasons, right? So it's important to note, though, there's different kinds of users that that the Jet license kind of identifies. There's really two. I include a third one because it's kind of like a non-user. But there's designers, and designers are the ones who can actually like pull the report into design mode and kind of tweak the formula. And actually, they're the ones who will build the reports. Then there's viewers, and these are people who can click the refresh button and pull fresh data into the report. But then there's also non-Jet users. And so you could, either designer or viewer can run the report. And because it's an Excel file, you just save it and you can attach it to an email or distribute it to non-Jet users. And they can look at the static values of that report. They won't need to, they won't be able to refresh it or drill into it, all that kind of stuff. But at least, that's one kind of possible user group you might have as well. The reason why I bring it up is because the licensing options generally, like you pay for these designers and viewers, and obviously designers are more expensive than viewers. A designer is a viewer, so you don't have to sign two for the people who have to build reports. But ultimately, it comes down to like these three tiers of people. So really, if you just have one person who builds and everyone else just needs to look at the static results, then it's only really a designer you need, really.
Is now joining.
So so Power BI or Jet reports, right? This is a common kind of thing that we see. Oftentimes, I do recommend clients explore Power BI before going over any pay for option. Just see what's available to you before you start exploring anything else to fill in the gaps of your reporting. But they are different things for different purposes. So, I like to say the right tool for the right job. Actually, I've never said it before today, but I put it as kind of the heading of this slide here, and it is true. Like Power BI has its place in the world. It is a very good tool for building dashboards that are interactive. That the C-level kind of staff, I call them staff really, the executive team that like to see, and managers like to see kind of KPI roll up type data. And when I say Power BI, I'm also talking about Power Query. Power Query as well has its place in the world of having kind of more pivot table data. Jet Reports is really for that Excel view of data where you want to have like a print-friendly or very specific layout of reports. Financial statements are quite often the one that we see the highest use case for with Jet Reports, because you can group them, subtotal them, however which way you want, present it exactly the classification and categorization that you want, have multiple sheets, one for income statement, one for cash flow, like all that kind of stuff that you would have probably done in Excel anyway. Like if you were told to produce financials, you may have gone in there and done that kind of stuff. Jet can like automatically do that stuff for you. So that's really
exiting.
That's really the type of report that Jet Reports is heavily styled for, right? Then drill down capability is another thing where Jet Reports really shines. Power BI and Power Query, your drill down capability is oftentimes pretty limited, if at all, there. Whereas with Jet Reports, you can click on like a total, and then you can drill into and see all the transactions that make up that total, for example, or that invoice, or whatever the case may be. So the drill down capabilities in Jet are pretty awesome. And it even comes in 2 different flavors, which is interesting too. I'll show those as well. Report options are another one. So with Power BI and Power Query, you can obviously set up what are called report parameters that are kind of user entered fields. It's just not as intuitive or as user friendly. There's no lookup kind of action behind that. So Jet Reports has this the report option stuff where at the time that you refresh the report, you can click a little button and look up and select multiple things, like if you're doing dimensions or customers or whatever, and you could type in your filters that are the same filters that you would put in Business Central, like the dot to specify ranges and all that stuff. I'll show you what that looks like too, but basically, long story short, report options really shine with Jet Reports, and that's kind of a big, strong pull towards Jet. And finally, scheduling distribution. Power BI reports and Power query reports for that matter, can be technically scheduled. They have a little bit more rigidity with how it's scheduled. Even with the pro license, Power BI reports can only be scheduled to run, I think, up to 8 times a day, and it's really just running exactly as is. Whereas when it comes to Jet, you can schedule it to run by different types of dimensions, by different date ranges, different kind of report options here, let's say. And then you can also have it distributed. You know, you could attach it to an email and send it to multiple recipients. And you can have the subject line be dynamic and the body of the text be dynamic. So it's got a pretty robust, I would say, scheduling and distribution engine on with it as well. So that's kind of another thing with Jet. There are actually a bunch more reasons that I will oftentimes lean towards Jet for certain things that I didn't put on here because of screen real estate. But you know, another one might be with Power BI, you have to identify a page and publish the page to then consume the page in your Power BI report. Whereas with Jet, you literally have access to every table. So if there's no page for it in Business Central for the data you're looking for, you can't pull it into Power BI. You have to create a page to then publish, right? Whereas with Jet reports, you can actually just reach in and reach to any table in the database that you want, which is phenomenal. Okay, time for the demo. All right. Oh, look at that. Here's my Business Central demo company. But okay, so I feel like the best way to demonstrate Jet is to talk a bit about these kind of baked in quick select options first, just to demonstrate how they work, and then go into the part that I really have fun with, which is building an ad hoc report. There are these buttons like quick financial statements. So fast financials, for example, reaches into your Business Central data set, and it pulls your chart of accounts. And it actually looks up, you know, the subcategories and all that kind of stuff. But basically, you know, you can have your actual and your budget stuff on there. You can have it automatically calculate variance, and you can just pretty much just select the fields you want and drag and drop it, really. And that's how these fast financials kind of work. It is, as the name implies, a very fast way to do it. Oftentimes, we find people not even bothering to drag in, you know, all these kind of posting accounts. They'll just drag in the totaling accounts to basically have like a roll-up view of things. And you can see it pulls it in there. And then I can, you know, run this. And when I click the run button, you'll see all this options. This is the report options I was speaking to. You can put a start date, you know, 1/1/2020, end date, let's say 8/5/2020. And then I can, you know, look up to what my, you know, in this case, I have department code, let's say these three. And then my second dimension code, I think this is region code in my demo instance or whatever. And then you click run, and then it goes, reaches across the internet and, you know, grabs the data. And you'll see when I click on these fields, there's that little down arrow. That's the drill down capability I was talking about. So if I click that, it actually goes and opens up Business Central. In this case, it's pulling up nothing. And actually, mine is going to error out because my my login, Catapult ERP, is actually connected to literally everyone on this call's Business Central instance, so it gets a little confused. You won't have this issue, but the drill down capability is there. And remember, I was saying there's two drill down flavors. If you don't want to leave Excel to drill down, you can switch it to what I just did, which is the Jet Data Grid. And when you drill down, it actually, what it does is it'll pull that data and put it into like a little subframe within Excel itself, where you can see all that underlying data. Now, in this case, I don't have any data, so it doesn't pop up. Oh, yeah, so no records, so it doesn't have any data in there, but you would have seen all the data in here, and you could export it, copy it, do whatever you want. But this is the second drill down that doesn't leave Excel to drill down into the underlying transactions, if you don't want to open up your browser to see them, for example. So that's, in a nutshell, that's the fast financials button. And I know I kind of inserted some other things to show in that, but that's kind of how that works. You can always, you know, modify and tweak those report options by clicking report options. You can add your own custom options in here, you know, and then, you know, you could have the lookup be your own kind of custom lookups. Or if you say, you know, I don't want people to be able to filter by budget code, for example, you want to hard code that, you can remove some of these options from them and all that kind of stuff. It's freaking out at me because I got rid of options that it's referring to. But then there's also the report wizard, which is the second one. And so for this one, you can go ahead and pick which table that you want to pull from. So I want to pull from the GL account table. I click next. What fields do I want? Well, I like to have the number. I like to have the name, let's say, and then maybe the category and subcategory, and then yeah, and then maybe maybe the net change or something. I don't know. Yeah, let's pull in net change. And then you can click your filters. So I want to filter by date, let's say, and then I could type in my own kind of date here. And if I'm doing net change, it makes sense to do like a range. And then here, if I check this little box, this will allow users at the time that they refresh to pick this. So basically it adds it as a report option. And then maybe I want to have account type only be posting accounts, let's say. And then I don't want to check this off because I don't want users to mess around with that. I want this to be a fixed filter kind of thing. So then I do that. I can group it by subcategory, let's say. And then I can add sorting options. I don't really care for that. I can add totals, and I want to total by net change. And then I want to add basic Excel formatting, which I think it just makes the headings bold. It's not a very fancy thing. But then you can go in and you can change the formatting to it. And then it gives you a nice little summary of what you just did, and then you click finish. And then it should basically build out the report for you. You don't have to use the wizard. You could very well just do all the stuff yourself. But then you go in and you run this thing. And I'll just do it for the month of January. Why not? I actually don't know if I have any data for January. Well, I guess we'll find out soon enough. But you can see like it's pretty straightforward. You click run, you put in your parameters. It does all the math and grabs the stuff and just puts it into whatever kind of template or format that you basically build it to look like. The more data you have, the more companies you cross, that kind of stuff, the longer obviously the report takes to run. But by and large, for most reports, it's not like super long. It's like less than a minute for this one, for example. And it goes and it did all that stuff, right? I told it to group by subcategory, so it's grouping by subcategory. And then this formatting I don't like. For example, I just go back to design mode, and I can make my changes in design mode and go here and basically I'll highlight that whole thing. I want to see it in accounting, and I don't like decimal places, for example. And now it'll remember that formatting change I did, and when I refresh it, it'll do that. And again here, you can click on the drill down button, for example, and you could see like all the underlying transactions that make that up, kind of thing, right? So that's the second one, the report wizard. Yeah, I don't really care for that. The report wizard function, which is pretty cool in my mind. Table builder, I find a lot more compelling. Table builder to me is like the easy version of Power Query. I love Power Query, don't get me wrong. It has its own place in the reporting universe, but I find it kind of cumbersome to build out and link and do all that kind of stuff to ultimately just get a table in the end. Whereas this table builder will build the table for me, where I can then put a pivot table on or slicers or whatever, right? So a good example might be, if I want to pull in the vendor table, this will show me what fields are on the vendor table. Let's pull in the standard things that I love. I love to see the number. I know not everyone cares for that, but I like the number. I like the name. Let's pull in, I don't know, posting group. And then, yeah, so let's pull that in, right? And then now I want to link this to a second table. I click add table, and let's say I want to pull in my vendor ledger entries. And this is how you'd build, an aged accounts payable report, for example, because you'd want to know the ledger entries associated with the vendor. So how are these two tables linked? If I click add link, I'll just say where the vendor number in the vendor ledger entry table is equal to the number field on the vendor table. And now there's a link. And you know what? I only want to include the vendor rows when there are ledger entries, so I don't have a whole bunch of like vendors with no details in there. Now that I have the second table, when I click on it, I have all the fields from that second table that I can pull in. Let's say I want to pull in, document type, because I want to see invoices and stuff. Document number. Ooh, posting date's a good one. Posting date. And then amount is a sum field, so I'm going to pull in amount. And then up here, you'll see it has like basically a column view of the table. So I'm going to actually, I'm going to rename these because I don't like the naming of all of them. So this is, I'll just call this posting group. I'll just call this doc type. Call this no. And I'm kind of a stickler for the order of columns. I like to have like posting date precede my document type and stuff. I'm very particular about that. So it's just a matter of dragging and dropping stuff. And then here's amount. And you can add in your own kind of custom columns here too, with actually Excel formula if you need to in there. Let's say it's basically amount minus something to come up with variance and all that stuff. I'm not gonna really bother with that because there's no variance on the ledger entry unless actually I pull in remaining amount. Whatever. Okay, so now I can put in my filters for the vendor ledger entry. Let's say when I want to run this, I want to run this by looking at a certain posting date period. In this case, I'll just do up till today, whatever, right? And then here, this little checkbox, user defined, again, going back to that concept that I want my user to be able to specify this at the time of running the report. And in fact, actually, I want them to also be able to specify which vendors they want in there. So maybe I'll have the posting group, via user defined field as well. And now I click OK. It asks me if I want to save this, template, and it might be a good idea if you're going to build reports like this all the time or tables. I just don't particularly care right now. But once you do that, it does a little bit of hocus pocus, a little bit of magic there, and then when I click on run the report, I can actually do that kind of filtering or whatever. And then you click run, and it pulls in all the data as a table because it's a table builder, recall. So clicking on that. It is like any other Excel table. It's got a name. You can insert a pivot table against it, and it's refreshable, right? Maybe I want the posting group, and then the name, let's say, and then the amount. And again, I'm very particular about my formatting. I don't like decimal places or dollar signs, so I'm going to click that. And then, oh, much better. And then I can obviously, add my slicers, let's say posting group. So now I can kind of like toggle and all that stuff. And then maybe I want to insert a timeline as well against the posting date. And then now, I can pretty much just drill in and say, okay, for the month of January. Ooh, okay, looks like we only had domestic vendor ledger entries, February as well. Okay, we're pretty geocentric, I guess, for this year, this quarter anyway. So yeah, you can, obviously put in your slicers. You can put in, I don't know, what do you recommend, Excel? You can pull in, your, oh, never mind, I had a filter on, that's why. Yeah, you can pull in your graphs and all these kind of stuff, bar charts, pie charts, anything that Excel pretty much supports, you can put it against that. And again, this is all refreshable. So I can click on run. And let's say I only want to pull in domestic, and I run it again, and you'll see my pivot table updates as well to only have the domestic ones in there. You see foreign's blank because there's nothing in there right now. And ideally, you'd probably just make this the slicer setting don't show stuff that has no data. Make a cleaner look there. But yeah, so that's the table builder, and I do find this really a powerful thing, the table builder. Oftentimes, I tend to have the view that a lot of people's reports, quote unquote, are actually just lists or just a table of combining two different things. And this really meets that need heavily. All right. Anyway, so that's that. The next kind of bit I want to showcase is really where I think Excel and Jet reports really kind of show how how awesome they are. And that's in the Freeform design. So you don't have to use all these wizards. To me, this is the most boring part of the presentation, are these things here. The part that I really like really is this Freeform design. So let me just, before I kind of get into really the nitty gritty of it, I just want to talk a bit about replication. So you notice with all these reports, we build something and then something happens, right? You're building rows of data, you're building columns of data and all that kind of stuff. So what Jet does is it replicates data for you. And I was saying you can use the interface to build your formula, or you can just type it in, whatever kind of works for you. But I like to, let's say, for example, if I'm building an income statement report and I want it to look a very specific way, I can kind of design it to look that way. So if I go in here, I do equals NL rows, which table I want to pull from the GL account table. What I want to pull the number, and then I only want to pull account type, our posting. So basically it's got its own syntax of kind of how you build stuff, or you can use this this little interface to say, what do you want to pull? I want to pull rows or columns or whatever, or a count of stuff, from which table, and you can, pick your table. You can pick which field you want to pull. And then you can then put in your filters, say account type is posting, account category might be something. But for this demo, you can also put in parameters like limit. I'm going to limit to 10 records. And this other kind of cool thing too is this is where, if you have multiple companies in your organization, there are filters down here too, where you can pick the company. Oops, I picked the wrong one. Company. And then here you can actually pick which company you're kind of selecting from. So if you imagine if you had company A, B, C, D, E across columns, you could point it to that, and it could basically pull that value from each company. And I'll show you what that means in a second. But I want to kind of maybe build out the name too, because I don't like actually. I like to have the name there. So NL first result from the GL account table. I'm going to pull the name where the number is this. And this is kind of where the Excel capability comes in handy, because you can use absolute values. You can refer to other cells, and then it pulls the name, right? So I have number here, I have name here. And then I can always make this bold. I can put a nice little underline. I can shade it, because I'm superficial like that. And then I just run this thing. And then what it's going to do now, it just pulls in, because I set the limit to 10, it'll pull in the first 10 posting accounts that it found. Okay, so that's not super fancy, right? That's pretty baseline. But I could also put in here NL sheets dimension value. I want to pull in the dimension code, where the dimension code is, let's say, department. What does that mean? So now it's going to build out rows of data and sheets of departments. So if I click on that, you'll see it automatically created all these sheets with the different department codes as the names, right? And then it also did these GL accounts across rows, right? Now let's say I want to pull in a couple months of data here. So now I can also go equals NL columns. I want to pull in dates. I never remember the syntax of this. Well, I think it's period start. And again, you could use the interface for this. I just really like typing, so that's kind of my thing. Also, I find this one tends to wow people, because it's like, well, how do you know all this stuff? It's just, yeah, once you use the software, it's just like Excel. You just remember kind of the formula structure, just like if statements or VLOOKUPs or all that stuff. Period type is month. Okay, so now here I have the period name. I can go short date. Oh, actually, you know what? I don't want short date. I'm going to pull in month slash YY, something like that, right? And then let's give it the same kind of formatting treatment that we like. So now what does that mean? So now again, I'm pulling in sheets of departments. I'm pulling in rows of GL account numbers, and I'm pulling in columns of dates. And this is all dynamic, right? So I could very well put in a report option, call this, date range, and then say 01/01 2020 to 03/31 2020. I'm using US dates, by the way, so it's month, day, year in this case. And then I could give this option a name. I could call it date filter. That's just Excel capabilities. And then here, I could just change this. Instead of being a hard-coded filter, I can just refer this to the date filter named range, right? And so now, at the time that people run the report, based on what they put here, that'll change what shows up here by columns. I could also put in a department filter, right? So that it doesn't create a sheet for every department. It'll be based on whatever the user enters, let's say. But now the really fun part equals NL, let's say, first from the GL account table, I want to pull in the balance at date, where the date filter is this cell. And then I'm going to lock this. Actually, you know what? I want the balance at date of the end of the month. This just showed me the beginning of month. So I'm going to use Excel capabilities. There's the EO month, which is end of month formula. And I click this. I'm going to lock the row because the columns will move. And then 0. And then I want to also pull in department filter, department code filter. Department filter, and point it up here and lock that as an absolute reference. Obviously, it knows better than I do what the syntax should be. And I'm just going to verify my formula there by clicking this and look here and see, is it called department filter? I always doubt myself. Yeah, department filter. Okay, and now when I run this, it is going to, again, replicate by sheet according to the departments, replicate a bunch of rows based on the GL account range that I set up. Okay, this is a really poor example because there's no transactions there. You know what? Maybe I'll actually change this to be income balance. I want income statement accounts. Yeah, there's probably going to be some income statement balances, right? Balances is probably the poor choice too. We probably want the net change. But you kind of get where I'm going with this. Ultimately, it'll go by sheet. It'll replicate. It's going to filter this by this department code, by this date range, and by this GL account number. And then again, all this has drill down capabilities to get to that point. And then, and people get picky with their report design. They're like, well, I want a heading and I want the name of the department code. I don't want the code to appear there. Well, you can use these hide show kind of tags. So this will hide the whole column. If I do this hide, it'll hide the whole row. And then you can actually even have formula in here to basically dynamically hide and show. So I can go equals if, let's say sum of all these stuff is equal to 0, then hide. Otherwise, show, right? And that way it can dynamically hide and show the rows based on whether there's data or not. And then you could do things like dimensional income statement. Give it a nice heading. That's going to be hidden row, so I'm going to actually just put it there. And then you might want to say equals NL first, dimension value. I want to pull the name where the code is admin and its dimension code is department. I just wanted to make sure that I had this bit here, dimension code is department, because technically there could be an admin cost center dimension. It could be an admin, department dimension. Anyway, so I just want to make sure I'm being absolutely certain which dimension I'm pulling it. And there you go. And there's administration. And you can concatenate things, right? So you can actually say department and % to concatenate. And you have stuff like that. You can embed if statements, like basically say, you know, if the NA or whatever is equal to blank, then use just the code or whatever, right? So this is where it kind of really shines. You're using Excel capabilities with Jet capabilities to build kind of your report out exactly the way you want it. And that's the beauty of it all. And then there's these statements you can put in here like fit, and this will automatically resize, you know, depending on how big. It's basically like double clicking, you know, when you double click it, it auto fits kind of thing. So that's kind of what that does. And if you don't want it to auto fit, you just remove that and you size it exactly the way you want it. So it's pretty awesome like that. And you could do all this kind of, you know, conditional formatting. You could use all the basic Excel formatting capabilities, and then you can run your report. And again, you know, I probably should have looked up what transactions I have in the system so you can actually see numbers in there. You don't just see a bunch of zeros. Yeah, that's poor thinking on my end, I think. But ultimately that's kind of how this all works. Then you have things like scheduling. So you can schedule a report, and the screen may have gone black for a second because you do need admin rights on the machine you're doing this. But ultimately, you know, you have your little scheduler here. You can create a new schedule. And which monitor will that appear on? Okay, and we can call this income statement. Oops, well, that crashed on me. All right, Excel really doesn't want to cooperate with me there, but you can set up schedules to run in whatever frequency you'd like, and that's where you also set up the email recipients and the body and the subject line and all that kind of stuff on that front. And you can switch companies just by using this little toggle up here. So, you know, if you're using multiple companies, you can use this and select another company. You can also embed that in the formula itself. So if you want to, you know, if you want to create a dimensional income statement, let's say by company, I could just do NL Sheets company and pull in the company name here, and then that could be a multi-company thing. We often see consolidated reporting where people go NL columns, and then they go company and they pull in, you know, the name or whatever, and then it goes company A, B, C, D, E, F, and then they have their GL accounts going across down, and then they'll do a sum of all those to kind of do consolidated, and then they'll add like a user entered kind of eliminations, you know, column, and then that one has a total. So there's a lot of great things you can do with the row replication, with column replication, with sheet replication, and obviously it's all Excel capable, right? And that's in my opinion anyway, that's where I think Excel, Jet Reports is a phenomenal tool. All right, looks like I didn't need to time it. It's already within the time, but that's kind of really more or less what I wanted to show. At this point, actually, I'll open up. Do you guys want to see something? Anything? This is now, you know, a free for all. So
there was a question, Ramin, about multiple entities, and I just wanted to see if there was maybe something we could cover on that.
Yeah. I'll just I just want to be mindful of the fact that there's a bunch of test companies in here that I think may have been used for demo capabilities, and I don't want to kind of show the names, but let's see. There's Awesome Sauce, and there's Catapult, and there's Superstore. There's a random one I just made for a demo. Okay, so yeah, you can have multiple companies. So if you go equals NL, it depends how you'd like it. You can have company by sheet or company by column. Let me do company by column because that one I really like doing. It's because that's a common use case for like consolidated trial balance or whatever. So I want to pull from the company table, and I want to pull, let's say, the name, and I'm going to put in a static filter. You don't have to do this by any metric, but again, I'm just mindful of the fact that we have a bunch of like demo stuff in there. So I'm going to say either starts with the word awesome or has the word catapult in it or has the word Borg, because that's the company I'm in, Borg Collective, or has, I think Superstore was the one I did for a blog post. And then our marketing team told me, don't do that because that's a real company. So I actually had to create a whole new demo company. it was really just a copy and I renamed it, so it wasn't a big deal. But yeah, so if I do columns this way, so now I run this, and boom, now I have like company names up here, right? So now if I go equals NL rows and I do, let's say, let's do again the GL accounts. I know I tend to kind of beat this dead horse, so to speak, quite a bit, but I think as accountants we tend to use GL accounts quite heavily. So let's do NL rows. GL account, and I'm putting it all the way to the far left. You'll see why in a second. And I'm actually not going to tell it which field to pull. And you'll see what the advantage of that is. So account type is posting. And let's say income balance is income statement. Right, so now you see this interesting random thing, right? And this is called a key. So the beauty of this is instead of typing out every single thing I want, to pull out, I could put in the name of the field here. I want the number and I want the name. And I could use a second function that Jet has called NF. The NF function is pretty cool. So you point it to a key. I'm pointing it to this key. And I am going to lock the column because it's always going to be in column B. The field I want to pull is going to be that. And see, because the name is there, I just put it that way. And then click OK. And then it pulls the number and the name. And I could just copy that formula over. I could put the fit function up there. And then now, this is the other kind of cool function. There's actually a GL function just for accountants. You pull the GL function there. And then, it'll say, well, what do you want? You want the balance, the budget, the credits, the debits. I just want the balance. Which account? I'm going to point it to this column, and I am going to lock the column. The start date, I'll just leave it blank. But you could hypothetically put, your start and end dates. I don't care about any of these things, but the company is what I care about. I'm going to pull in the company name from up there, and I'm going to lock the row. And here, this is actually, okay, I should say, this little toggle here is a huge one. Exclude closing entries. So you can actually tell it to exclude the closing entries if you want to do cross-period analysis, because otherwise, you close a year, technically speaking, the sum of all your income statement entries is going to be 0 because you close it to retain earnings. But if you tell it to exclude close, it'll actually completely disregard those closing entries, and you could actually look at what your net changes were for the whole year and across years and all that kind of good stuff. So very, very powerful and understated kind of little function there. All right, so I go ahead and I do that. And then let me think. That's about it, right? Then I click on run. The little Jet report elves log into the system. They do the math, they carry their little calculators, and they add up all the transactions for each company, and boom. And so now I have, now I have values. Great. When I was demonstrating the other sheet, didn't have, whatever. Okay. I won't dwell on that. But you can see here that you have the companies across columns, you have the GL accounts across rows, and obviously the intersection of the two is going to give me the total balance. And again, I could have formatted this to be no decimal places or whatever, but I didn't. But yeah, so you do that, and then you could do, actually, you know what? Let me demonstrate this. So total, and this is where anchor columns come into play. I enjoy using anchor columns because I think it ensures that I capture all my data. Hider, really? Okay, and then I could do equals subtotal 9, and I just go across. And as long as I'm crossing a replicator, and you know what, just for good measure, I'll lock the E. It's going to actually expand that subtotal range to include, if another company gets added here, another company gets added here, this subtotal will capture that, so that's good. And then, you know what, I'll also do a total down here, and then I can do, sum and subtotal and all that stuff. Whatever, I don't really need to do that. But yeah, you do that, and then you put in your basic formatting. let's go with green because, you know, nature and stuff. So then you click on run, and boom. Okay. And yeah, I could have put the fit function at the very top to auto fit, but then it adds up all the, you know, all that stuff. So now you have a consolidated total. And then, like I said, you could technically put an eliminations column there, and then, you know, total or whatever, right? And then you can go equals this minus this or whatever, and then you have now kind of a worksheet you can use for consolidated reporting, right? Now you'll notice that whenever I do changes, I always switch it to design mode, and that's intentional. If I were to put something in here and I go to design mode, technically this row doesn't exist when it's back in design mode because it'll like roll back up to that single template line that I have, right? So it doesn't save that value here because this is a row replicator. There are functions you can use to save data, but it's way beyond the scope of this demo, so I won't even bother with that. But yeah, so you have this thing, and then obviously with these values, you have full drill down capabilities. You can see the underlying transactions that make that up. And I think you can tell that these two companies are a copy of each other, you know, because it's the same amount. But yeah, that's kind of that. And then you see, yeah, look at all these transactions that make up that total. Yay. And yeah, so this is really how it goes. And most likely what I would probably do is I'd probably have formatted this a little bit differently. I'd probably shade it a little differently. Again, you know, the world is your oyster when it comes to formatting because this is Excel. If you can do it in Excel, you can do it in Jet. It's as simple as that, right? Yeah, I hope that answers the question. I don't know. I tend to ramble a lot, so let me know if I went off script and if you want me to talk about something else.
That answered the question really well. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. I knew it must have been you, Lisa. When it comes to consolidated cross-entity reporting, that's definitely a Lisa question. Any other questions? Anything else you want to see? We have 9 minutes. I can show you anything you want.
Lisa, I think you had another one, right? Would you like to go ahead?
Sure. I did have another question. So we had seen a demo, we being the broader we, of Jet. It was over a year ago now, probably a year and a half ago. And one of the sort of hiccups was that there was a requirement to build data cubes. And it seems to me just in your demo here, there are no cubes. It's just all of the tables happen to be available. Am I thinking about this the right way?
Yeah. You only need data cubes if you have, actually, you never need data cubes. Let me put it that way. You can totally use this without an OLAP cube or whatever. But if you have like Sage and you have Business Central and you have like all these different data sources and you want to add them like into a Jet report, yeah, in that case, you probably want to explore a data warehouse and then have some cubes that drive off it just to make it run faster, right? But if you're purely doing Business Central, and you know it could also be other Business Central instances or other data sets, you don't need a cube per se. So let me just kind of show you this. Like when you're adding your data sources, you can point it to a cube for sure. You can point it to the Jet Data Warehouse, Great Plains, or GP is something as well. Business Central, Nav, or even like the universal one where you might have an access database or something you want to point to. You could do that. Now I will say one thing though. Each instance of any of these that you want to connect to is a license cost, is a connector, let's call it. So when you buy Jet Reports, you're buying one connector. I think it comes with like a designer and a bunch of viewers. I think that's like there's something called the starter pack that gives you all that like off the bat, and then you pay for any additional viewers, any additional designers, that kind of stuff. If you need to have Business Central and let's say an on-prem version of Nav, because I think in your case, Lisa, you guys do have some Nav related companies. If you did need to, for example, marry the data and connect to it and refresh automatically, you would have to buy 2 connectors, one for your Business Central and one for the Nav, right, kind of thing. If that makes sense.
Will you be following up for everybody in the call with pricing?
I think Colin can answer that. It's pricing's pretty straightforward, but yeah, for Colin, I think you got that right. or Jeff?
You know what? Probably best for me to just kind of collect that information and follow up afterwards, so that we can just have all the details there in one place. Easy to see.
I will say you can technically there's two kind of pricing. Well, there's four if you want to break it down, but there's two basic pricing things. One is the perpetual license, which kind of like a one-time big purchase, and then every year you pay like percentage maintenance. And then there's the annual or monthly kind of like subscription kind of quote unquote ones that don't have an annual maintenance. I think when we did the math, it's something like 5-year horizon. If you know you're going to use it for 5 years, then the perpetual license works out to be cheaper at that point. But the subscription price is cost effective enough that I would just recommend going subscription. Just personally, that's completely non sequitur, is it? But I just want to bring that up. All right. And so by the way, this is also you have sandboxes too as business central people. You have test company sandboxes. You can switch different companies using this toggle, and then you could switch different instances, so your sandbox or production 2 or whatever in this instance up here. So you can actually toggle either, and you can run this report against any of them. Now you notice, by the way, I've opted in these reports to use replicators and pull data dynamically from the system as opposed to hard code. There's nothing stopping you, however, from hard coding as well. Like, I'm just pulling rows, right? And assuming you have everything grouped and subcategorized in a nice and clean way, this works fine. But, if you, for example, know that your data in Business Central is one thing, but your reporting requirements different, you could also, put in your 6155 or something. You could very well hard code in the stuff that make this up, and you can call this, non-arm's length transactions or whatever, right? And you could always do NL or NL sum of the GL entry table, the amount fields for anything that has a GL account number that matches that, for example. You know what I mean? Like you could also hard code in all your filters too if you want to build it specific way. So you're not stuck to just replicating what's in the system. You have a lot of flexibility to hard code stuff in. It's just hard coding means more maintenance in case something changes, right? It also means it might not be relevant across companies if you're hard coding stuff in. But there are legitimate use cases for hard coding sometimes.
Ramin, this is Gary here. I'm going to ask the same annoying question I ask every time. Is this lovely session going to be available to view after?
I really hope not, because I'm obviously not the most prepared individual in the world, but I get the feeling that it is, because I think I see the little recording icon on the Teams.
Yes, there. I was recording, and we can make that available. I'll probably put it up as a private YouTube video that you can just go have a look at.
Could we hire like a voice actor or someone to like voice over me with like a Morgan Freeman type voice or something like that?
There is so much you can do with Jet Report.
That's right, exactly. Just rip the audio off their promotional marketing material. But yeah. Anyway, I hope that's kind of useful, and it kind of shows Jet. I'm not a salesperson. I like the tool and I like playing with it and like showing it. Let me know if there's anything specific you want to see, or follow up with Colin, and we could always do like a second session that's a little more, geared towards specific outcomes or reports you might be looking for. But this is Jet, and this is, it's been kind of the de facto ad hoc reporting tool, I should say, in the Nav universe forever. Power BI and Power Query have definitely added a lot more arsenal to reporting in these tools, especially in the cloud. So I will say Jet Reports is not a substitute for Power BI. You should definitely be exploring your own Power BI capabilities and the platform, the Power Platform in general. But Jet Reports can augment your reporting and kind of fill in the gaps. I find generally with the more financial and more kind of managerial, let's say, and sub-ledger type reporting, this is where that kind of fits in. Because as you all probably know, the out-of-the-box reporting in Business Central isn't stellar. It's a nice euphemism for it. But yeah, so it has its place. Everything like they both have their use cases, and I still strongly suggest you explore Power BI in and of itself, you know. And I don't have to obviously say that to Lisa, and you guys are already drinking the Kool-Aid and, you know, shining with Power BI as well. But if there was anything specifically on the kind of Excel, more kind of worksheety and printable kind of reporting that you're looking for, this is definitely a great option.
I'll follow up with everybody, make sure that you have pricing and kind of know what to do if you want to take some next steps exploring Jet. And I will make the recording available on a private YouTube video so anybody can go back and have a look. Thanks everybody for coming. We really appreciate you spending the time with us.